Okay, so Erin and I, we're on our conversation number two here.
Yes.
And our first one was really just, I thought it was really nice, just kind of talking what attracted us to the book and kind of first thoughts. And now diving in a little deeper, we can talk about, I guess I did write up a synopsis, which I will post some. Um,
Perfect.
but like, it'd be cool to talk about the OEAM. I was having some fun trying to explain this to somebody the other day. I said, studying, ontology, epistemology, axiology, and, gastroenterology,
Yeah. All the ologies.
all the ologies.
I actually
So,
have a post-it, like, I guess so on MacBooks, you can put like a post-it note on your desktop screen. And I actually have a post-it note that has all of them defined like in layman's terms, just so I kind of have it as a quick reference. I'm like, wait, am I
yeah.
talking about? Yeah, this is what I'm talking about.
Okay. Okay. What is the world that we're describing here and how knowledge is looked at and the
Exactly. I'm like, how do I
value?
want to put this? I'm like, ontology, like, what does it mean? Like, what does it mean to exist? Like that whole like kind of very philosophical, esoteric, Um, but yeah, because the OEM kind of gets caught up in your mind sometimes.
So anybody who's watching this video, you're going to learn a lot, and hopefully you're going to probably laugh too because we're having fun doing this.
Entertainment and knowledge. That
Entertainment.
is our epistemology. We
Yeah.
form knowledge through humor.
Well, I really love this book. So the book we're reading is Transpersonal Research Methods for the Social
Mhm.
Sciences. And I was saying a little earlier that I'm just finding this to be like so respectful of
Yeah.
researchers and those both, topics that we research and populations we research and
Mhm.
ways of expanding research. And like, so we read these two chapters, chapter one and chapter three, and they're kind of distinct. Like chapter one really focusing on like what are conventional methods and or orthodox or Western or whatever, and then proposing that there are multiple assumptions that are part of these more traditional methods. And we really kind of need to look at them critically. And then they propose this really beautiful set of, methods for, they're calling expanded research or,
Mhm.
but I like that it's, even though they looks like there's so many things that look like they're binaries, all these tables that, they all do look like they're opposites, um, but they really do bring it together. And the second chapter talks about integrative knowledge, and
Mhm.
um, so I think before we can integrate, I think we need to see what exactly is it that we're integrating.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they did a really beautiful job of that too. I think what was the one thing I kind of wrote down? Yeah, the way and Chalisa and LLG kind of did this too. Um and I think that the way that these authors did it was absolutely beautiful. Like you said, so respectful and so inclusive of everything and just like really blending all of these quantitative and qualitative approaches along with the newer kind of more participatory action like transformative paradigmatic frameworks in this like gorgeous way that was very collaborative. I think
Yeah.
they even called it like integral inquiry,
Mm-hmm.
which I really really liked. And just the way like they almost presented like a an evolution of the research too, kind of going through like the stereotypical positivist like
Yes,
causal
I felt
information,
that.
yeah, into the correlational, into like the contextual and theorizing, into the storytelling, into like the actual experiencing, and kind of just blending them all together and also showing how they can be super complementary, rather than focusing on the conflict that often happens with positivists and other paradigms, which again I think like Shalisa and LOG did a little bit more of like the kind of contrasting, kind of pointing out the
Yeah.
limitations, whereas I found that this text was very much like, I mean, again, from like my standpoint, I'm like, this is like a very trauma informed approach to
It
to
is.
research.
I thought so too. I mean, and also kind of showing how research can, I mean, they didn't use the word traumatize, but it definitely does talk about um, ways that research can be used to
Mhm.
isolate or to limit. Like, for example,
It
assumptions,
has in the
practices,
past.
yeah, assumptions and practices of conventional approaches to research. And we start getting into a little bit more about the values,
Mhm.
looking at the axiology. It says here, like, the assumptions are kind of cold in a way. It says,
Yeah.
just, seeing research as a special human activity that provides unique access to accurate, valid knowledge and possesses unique safeguards against error. So there's like this carefulness, but it's
Mhm.
as they begin, as you say, begin to build, it starts showing where um, it's not, back to, I guess, maybe some of the ontology, the world that's created or the world that's experienced is one that's actually kind of artificial. It's trying to sanitize
Yeah.
um, rather than really expand and include so many other ways of seeing the world and of living in the world. And I did highlight, we can get as we go a little bit deeper, but as I was reading, looking to see where it did reflect epistemology, um, and the values in there. And I really recommend this book for everybody. I think
Yeah.
this was a wonderful book for everybody in our program, just because knowing what people's inquiries are going to be about.
Yeah, I think just the level to which they were able to really explore, like you said, the different epistemologies and really kind of highlighting how, I mean, knowledge can be formed in a lot of different ways. There's so
Mhm.
many different sources of knowledge that we can access. And if we kind of expand the research paradigms and the methods in which we're able to access some of this, um, then we're able to explore it a little bit more and really valuing a lot of things as research instead of that more limiting viewpoint. um which again, they highlight very well that can be very valuable and
Yeah.
helpful for things. And I know one thing that kind of stood out to me too is what you had mentioned it when they were talking about how that framework can actually create like a false sense of like what something actually looks like usually life doesn't happen in a controlled laboratory setting,
Mhm.
and I always think of like animal studies and animal models of illnesses and things like that when they do like mice and like rat studies, and it's like, okay, well, you also like this doesn't mean that it's applicable to humans, and especially not within those contexts. And that even, I think it was Marin, or maybe it was somebody else that
Mhm.
we're talking about the idea of like false rationality, and it
Mhm.
reminded me of
Mhm.
that, like this idea that we can like over logic so much and reduce something so much that it's not even necessarily applicable to real life or
Oh, well,
like
in my field,
implementation.
yeah, it's always this, like, I work with a lot of, psychologists, psychiatrists,
Mhm.
and at the research conferences, there's such a dismissal of coaching, and coaching research. It's probably what it was like for psychotherapy a long time ago,
Yeah.
because psychotherapy and coaching, they don't happen in these sanitized, controlled experiences. These are like warm and hot feelings, and there's relationship between two different people, or unless or more if it's a couple or if it's a family.
Yeah.
But you know, sharing in real time. These cannot be programmed, and
Um,
no matter how many, as you know, as a therapist, how many techniques or
mhm.
frameworks you learned, what shows up is what shows up. You're not gonna, you can't, constrain
No.
um, constrain those things. So, um,
Well, you hit the nail on the head. A lot of that is the relational context and the empathy, right? Which you can't really quantify that very well. And I always think it's very
absolutely.
interesting because there are a lot of quantitative studies about like the therapist client rapport, and it has shown, they've done research on it a lot, that overwhelmingly the rapport is what predicts like efficacy of therapy, whether
That's
that's like
right.
a decrease in symptoms or patient
Over.
self-report or satisfaction. It doesn't matter what like technique you use. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter like what modality, what framework. I mean, some of those things are a little bit more effective than others from a quantitative
Yeah.
perspective. But then there's a lot of cases where it's like, it really is a match for like the person. They have to connect with a therapist. They have to connect with the modality.
It's
Like
that
if I
same
come
thing
in
with
and use
social.
EMDR with somebody, like EMDR is very, very effective. If I use it with someone who doesn't trust me and is like, what is this weird stuff? It's not going to work for them. Like,
Yep.
it's just not going to work.
Yep.
So that's that human aspect that, again, like, this is what we're kind of talking about here. How do we access that, and how do we get those pieces in a way where we're really getting a full picture of an experience,
Well,
or
so
able to, because we're getting these different angles, maybe from different researchers, but
well, we both did take some notes, and so this one speaks directly to ways of knowing. It's actually one of the headings,
yeah.
and so I put this under epistemology, and it's on page 16 in chapter 1. It says, we recognize the possibility of alternative forms of knowing and of extending and expressing knowledge, the importance of tacit or personal knowledge, and of knowledge obtained through intuition, direct
Mhm.
knowing, I love this, empathic sensitivity, and what might be, let me see, what might be um, maybe even construed as paranormal. Most important, we recognize the validity of working with the subjective experiences of research paradigms and researchers. Um, so looking beyond, just the objective to the subjective. And then it says that transpersonal research methodologies embrace alternative ways of knowing. Um, and they put that under the word bolder. And then bold. And then they got
Yeah.
getting even bolder, knowing through becoming, it said.
Mhm.
Emotional, intuitive, and nonverbal expressive aspects can be added to research to make them more complete, more
Mhm.
balanced, and more literally, like, expand to the dimensions of what is really being studied, which is humans.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know in like the third chapter too, they dive a little bit deeper into that and talking about like the experiences themselves. So like interpreting the experiences that people have of some of these things. Um, and they really focus on like describing it. So you're able to kind of access, and I think they said like, here we go. Yeah, in gaining a description of a complex system, we seem to give up certainty about specific subcomponents and their causal interplay. Um, so you're actually able to look at like the interrelationships between things as they naturally occur, and actually studying like what is happening in the experience itself, instead of creating it or trying to create it in an environment that might not naturally occur. So, and again, to me, that kind of aligns a little bit with the qualitative perspective of things, where you're describing something and kind of seeing what emerges and seeing what the patterns are, instead of going in with like a theory or a hypothesis of like, oh, this is what I'm going to find,
Mhm.
which then you're going to be more likely to find it because you're looking for something specific, versus like,
Absolutely.
let's see what is already here.
And that can help us be more, um, oh, I don't know, just not necessarily even honest, but I think it can help us hone down our research question, um, to checking in with our own lived experience. They were also talking about the
Mhm.
researcher, himself or herself, themselves, listening to, like, feeling our body, like our somatic
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I
These
thought that was
things.
really cool, like using it as like almost a guide for the research process, and like just being like guided
Mhm.
towards these things. And it's so true, right? When you're reading about things or you're
Yeah,
studying, these things just kind of come out of nowhere. Like you find a text, or someone sends you an article, or you bring up a discussion in class, and you're like, oh, like that never, if I would have planned this out, that never would have come
exactly.
up,
And the
you know?
synchronicity of that. It said even, this is so cool, and I know you really would like relate to this a lot. This was on pages 62 and 63 in chapter 3. Um, Supporting atmosphere, it said, having like a supporting atmosphere.
Yes, I know exactly what
Part
spot you're
of it,
talking about.
it said even including such things as dreams, insights, yeah, somatic experience, and one's intentions, and then expanding into, um, questioning assumptions all through phases of the research as being a high value.
Yeah. I had I had highlighted this line kind of stood out to me, and I had again emerge also from my Gestalt perspective. Everything is about something emerging. So I feel like I just like write down emerge in like text half the time. I'm like, oh yeah, I know what I'm talking about. Um, but they said, well, so when we direct a sufficient density of interest, intentionality, and attention toward a topic, the universe seems to join in, beneficiently conspiring to provide additional pieces to the puzzle and helping us advance our thinking about a topic in question. And I just love that because it's the combination. Again, it's not like it just comes out of nowhere. It's like we have this interest, we have the intentionality, and we pay attention to things. And then we're able to see the nuances and kind of connect things in a way and get curious about it and dive deeper to something that really is research with scholarly integrity and rigor.
Absolutely. And this is, I think, what Dr. Montori was talking about with the literature search as a kind of a creative inquiry.
Yes.
Feeling like, why are we drawn to this? Like getting that, yes, oh my gosh, this could be valuable for my inquiry, or this is this is foundational knowledge. So when I write up my notes that I will post about, a little bit of the axiology, the methodology, some of these things, I'll share some of the quotes that I found to be powerful. Did you organize them, kind of in those, a little bit in those ways as well? Like as you were reading, like, oh, this is axiology, this is methodology, this is some of the epistemology.
Yeah, not specifically in that way. I tend to be I'll show you an example. I start reading something and then 15 things start happening in my brain at the same time, which I'm sure you can relate to. And then my pages just kind of look like this. There's just like,
oh, wow.
And highlights and stuff. And then when I go back, I like visually recognize the page and the note that I wrote down. And then I also remember like what is actually in the text itself. Like it's very messy.
Yeah,
but
I did this from a different reading. I do the same kind of a thing.
Oh yeah, okay.
But for this one, I had gotten the book from the library, so even though I do have it from the reader, it was helpful for me in terms of the page numbers. So I did, kind of take like these copious notes here. But I found this very interesting too. So under axiology, anywhere in the book that I saw things having to do with values, one of them was talking about conventional research is value free. This is one of the assumptions under conventional research. That really stood out.
Oh yeah, that's from chapter 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Conventional research is value free and should therefore be distinguished from other human endeavors, which values and meaning, in which values and meanings play an important role. That is, endeavors such as, I gotta read my handwriting.
Which is not true because it values certainty. Like it's trying to find certainty, that just makes me laugh. I'm like, you're valuing objectivity and certainty.
Right.
So there are values.
Yeah, it's right here. So this idea that like it should be value free, we know that doesn't make any sense. But it says, here we go.
How can anything be value free?
Practical applications, endeavors such as practical applications, clinical, social, educational, and other practices and services, and work contributing to the research, growth, development, and possible transformation. Like, how do we get values out of that? Remove that. But to counter that, for the assumption of what they're calling the expanded or transpersonal view, which I think is so much more, really, it's so much where we're heading. Research it sounds almost like the opposite. It says research is value laden. We need to just acknowledge that.
I love that.
I think the reason they're saying research should be value free is because we know it's really not. We're trying to sanitize it. It says here, research is value laden. Our research methods are infused by judgments about their soundness, trustworthiness, and use, and these involve considerations of value and worth.
Exactly. So then again, it's going to the transparency. Like we're not trying to take ourselves out of the research because that's impossible, really, fully anyway. So it's like, no, let's just kind of lay it out on the table and be authentic with it and come from it at, okay, this is this perspective from this research lens, from this researcher using these paradigms and methods. And there are also other ways to study it that also add value to the field, to application, to knowledge in general.
And I think what you're sharing is that though they may be seen in the academy or whatever as not legitimate, um, in our lived experience, they feel quite, they feel very salient, and we know they're legitimate. Like,
Mhm. And I
uh,
think it's becoming more legitimate in the conventional field too, in some ways. Maybe not necessarily, again, like in your extreme experience of like
yeah,
medical model like psychiatry and things like that. Maybe not quite in that positivist of a worldview, but I think a lot of
yeah.
other fields are opening up a little bit more
They're
than they
opening
have
up
in the
to,
past.
yeah, they're opening up to like more, third wave, to mindfulness
Hmm.
more. But of course, people who are presenting on mindfulness had to have done a pilot, and they had
Right.
to
And like
be like,
Kabat-Zinn had to like basically make it like super, super structured.
right, people had to like, they're,
It's like
the
this is Buddhism,
waitlist group
essentially.
compared to the non-waitlist group. Um,
Yeah.
but so there are openings to this way of knowing. One of my favorite parts of the book, I mean, really, really favorite, at least, I mean, the chapters that we read was the very end of the first chapter on words. Um,
Yes.
I loved it. I'm gonna share that
That was
I
beautiful.
did type it up.
I think
And
I like put like 3 stars by it.
I just love it so much. Um, so let me see if I can open this up.
Yeah. Oh, and I even said it to me, it was like the meaning of research. Like they just basically summed it up in a freaking sentence.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, I loved also here, I'll share a little bit, words. This final section of chapter 1 is one of my favorites, and I want to share a bit here. I'll probably just post this.
Yeah.
But two words that the authors play with in detail are research and respect.
Yes, this is the one. Oh my gosh.
Isn't
Yeah. I'm
that
like,
cool?
meaning of research.
I love it. It says research,
Yeah.
searching anew, back again, and then and put this in quotes, circling around again and again provides a fine metaphor for the research enterprise. Page 25. And then respect, which is interesting, it says, when we respect someone or something, we look again, like
Hmm.
respect, our spectacles. We pay special attention and we honor. Um, and then
I'd never thought of it that before. And that just like when I
either.
read that, I was like,
I love wordplay. I really,
yeah.
really enjoy, but also like that's a certain kind of a sensitivity. Um, and then some other words they had were like
I'm
dwelling
sorry.
and
My
deep.
dog just looked up like with the
Oh,
weirdest look. Like she was snoring and then just
that's
stopped and like
Stella.
stared at me. And I was like, are you excited about research too? Oh my gosh. Okay. Am I being too loud? She just like huffed at me.
Come on over, Stella. You can be in the picture.
She's like,
Um,
absolutely not. She's not going to move.
no, she's not. Okay.
I'm sorry. I'll show her
Dwelling,
it again.
deepening. Yeah, it talked about the heuristic approach, which, oh no, it says the conventional positivist approach for research describes, explains, predicts, and controls.
Mm-hmm.
Heuristic approach. These are some of the methods, you guys, anybody who's watching our movie here, some of the methodologies that we'll get to deeper if we get into this book. But right now we're just doing chapter 1 and 3. But it says the heuristic approach describes, understands, and appreciates. The
Mm-hmm.
feminist approach tells, listens, emancipates, and empowers. It
Yeah,
makes
I
you
love
want
that.
to feel attracted to these methods. And then the transpersonal approach expands, enlarges, enriches, opens, interconnects within and without, integrates, unifies, awakens, transcends, transforms, and ultimately and hopefully enlightens.
Beautiful. I mean, and that's like a perfect summary right there. Like, yeah,
That's where we're going.
done.
Beautiful. All right. So now you're going to have to catch us on our Varieties of Scholarly Experience YouTube channel.
We should do a podcast. Here, wait, I'll show you guys Stella now. Oh, wow.
Okay.
She's probably not going to be very happy with me, but say hi.
Oh,
Say hi, Stell.
hi,
She's like,
Stella.
why would you wake me up? She's giving me the Sheba sass right now.
As you can see, we're doing participatory research with a canine fellow researcher here.
She's not wanting to participate, though. She's like, it's past her bedtime. Like, why aren't we sleeping right now? But I mean, actually, 10 o'clock is usually when she runs around like a crazy dog. So I don't know. She's having a different kind of day.
Wow.
Oh, am I bothering you? She's not pleased at this moment.
All right, well, let's
move away.
hold on. I'm gonna turn off the recording now. So
Okay.
we'll put it out, and then you and I can say goodnight.
Okay, sounds good.
Bye, everybody.